Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It's me, Candace, here for another author event. Today, I am talking with Stina Leicht, who is a sci-fi and fantasy writer living in Central Texas. Stina wrote a book called Persephone Station, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. This cover is so good, so we're going to talk about that as well. But the cover is really, really great. So this is Persephone Station, the book that we're discussing today. Stina has a bunch of books. She wrote mostly fantasy books. So she's the author of the Malorum Gates, Cold Iron, Blackthorn, and the Fae and the Fallen series. So I know some of you have read those series. Her newest book is Persephone Station, which is what we're talking about today. And she is an award-winning writer and award-nominated writer as well. She was shortlisted for the Crawford Award. She was on the Locust Recommended Reading list. She was an Astounding Award for Best Writer finalist in 2011 and 2012. So I'm really excited to talk to Stina today about Persephone Station. So welcome, Stina. Hello.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
And I'm so happy to have you here talking with us today. Persephone Station is a really good book, so I really hope everyone reads it. So let's see. First, I kind of like doing a little bit of like fun facts. So are there any like 2 or 3 fun facts about yourself that people may not know that don't like normally show up in your bios?
Fun fact 1, I have rally raced.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Fun fact 2, I came in 4th in a fencing tournament at my college. In the men's.
Awesome.
Let's see, what's another one? I bake a lot of pie.
That's amazing. Another fun fact that Stina and I just discovered right before this is that we're both Aries and our birthdays are like a week apart. I do want to mention before we really get going, if you have any questions, if you're watching and you have questions, whether during or like right now, you want to ask something, you can go ahead and type your questions in the chat at any time. And we will do Q&A at the very end and get those questions answered. So just at any time, just drop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So Stina, for those who may not be familiar with Persephone Station, can you introduce our viewers to it and tell them a little bit about what the book is about? And then what was your inspiration to write it? Because before I let you answer, this book does so many things. It's a samurai story. It's a space western. It's a mystery. It's an action novel. It's a political novel. It's like an old-fashioned shoot 'em up. It's got like bar fights and murder bears and like, battle mechs. Like there's so much of this. So tell us about it and how you were inspired to write it.
Well, a lot of it is stuff that I enjoy, and I thought, well, I may never get another chance to write another science fiction novel if this one doesn't do well, so I'll just stuff everything I love into it all at once. So that's part of it. The elevator pitch for it was it's a Magnificent Seven, gender flipped and set in space. But so there you go, with 6 women of color and 1 white woman who never speaks. That was the elevator pitch. So, oh goodness, I'm a big Kurosawa fan, so I have actually watched back to back The Seven Samurai and The Magnificent Seven. I've seen all the different versions of Magnificent Seven. Maybe I might have missed some of the more obscure ones. Some of this science, this isn't the first time that the Magnificent Seven has shown up in science fiction, and science fiction has a lot in common with Westerns in general. Even Star Trek was pitched as Conestogas in space. So there's always been that overlap between those two. but yeah, mostly I wanted to write something that was for the rest of us, right? Because most science fiction, when you see it, it's all about the straight dudes, right? The straight white dudes that are out doing their dude things. And everybody else is like either non-existent or is the object, the prize, or just standing on the side or being the sidekick, or it's just, I don't know. I've always wanted to be in the action, and I never realized how freaking important that was until the day I saw a Star Wars movie and there were actual female pilots in the background. I mean, and I started crying. So just having them running around and running to their planes or whatever, it just, that was when it hit me. I was like, yeah, this is not right. It's not fair. And I'm gonna damn well do something about it. So I did.
Which is amazing. And we were talking about this too right before we came on, that historically these sort of action oriented stories, or these like hero's journey kind of stories, are like so male oriented. And like everything, this is what we were saying, like, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, Harry Potter, like it's the same story over and over and over with the same type of people in it. So it was like really lovely to see a story that, and we're getting more and more of that, which is great, but really lovely to see this kind of like space Western super actiony story that is like all women and non-binary people and queer folks. Like it's like just everyone in it. And like there's I couldn't even name a man character if you asked me to right now, because they're so minor in this book. Which is awesome, and I loved it. And that was a question that I had for you too, because your cast is pretty much entirely female, BIPOC, queer people, and they're pretty much all mercenaries that are just like trying to, like, ex-soldiers who are trying to make their way on this backwater planet of Persephone. So why, I know you talked about like a little bit about why you did that, but another question that I had was, what was your process for writing about people who aren't like you? Because you do have a lot of, like different types of people in this book. And so I was just wondering, how did you go about doing that?
I have what I call the Uhura rule. Okay. As a Trekkie, Nichelle Nichols, when she played Uhura, at one point in time, she quit. She tried to quit, and she was just like, I don't do anything important on the ship, so I'm going to quit. So she turned in her letter of resignation, and then went to a party and happened to run into Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King turned out to be a huge fan and told her that she couldn't possibly quit. And she was like, but I don't do anything. Anybody could do my job. And he said, that's the point. Anybody could do your job. And so, and then she, of course, went back and didn't quit. And luckily, Roddenberry didn't really accept. He didn't even open the letter. So anyway, my approach is that whomever is in that role, anybody could be that in that role, and that's the point. All right. So I don't get into things that aren't in my lane. I try my best to keep out of things that are not in my lane, and just try to present, this is what they're doing, this is how they're doing it, and all that stuff. I read, there's a book called Writing the Other, and there's like a series of workshops.
It's so good. Yes, I've taken their workshops and read the book. It's very good. Yeah.
So there's that part of the research that I did. I had someone from Nigeria who did the sensitivity read because of Suki. But yeah, that's largely been my approach.
Cool. Yes, Niecy Shaw, love Niecy so much, and does writing the other, and Kate Tempest, Bradford, and they're amazing. And if anyone watching is a writer, I highly suggest at least reading their book, Writing the Other. If not, like going to research their workshops, because it's awesome. And I'm glad to see that you did those too, Stina. And so let's talk about some specific characters that I want to talk about. So I kind of want to hear about the generation of Rosie and Vizier, who sort of operate mostly like in the background of this book. Like they're not the forefront characters, but they're very important, both of them. And to me, some of the most interesting characters. Loved Rosie so much.
It was so much fun.
So I want to hear more about these characters and like where they came from. And let's talk about Rosie first, because Vizier is going to be a whole conversation. So
No, I love Rosie. I just love the word. I love the name Rosencrantz. So of course that's from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, which is also from Hamlet. Yeah. Anyway, I just love the name Rosencrantz. And so a friend of ours named their cat Rosencrantz and called the cat Rosie for short. So that Rosie's named after her cat.
Awesome.
I don't know. I love Killjoys. It's one of my favorites. And there's a character there that was the inspiration. And I really just loved that character so much. And I just wanted to give them something, I don't know, non-binary characters just, and maybe it's just a problem with the books that I've read. I've not seen a whole lot done with non-binary characters that isn't about being non-binary.
No, I totally agree with you on that.
Okay. In my experience, I don't see a lot of that. So I just wanted, again, I took the Uhura rule and just, that's who they are. And off we go. So, and I'm an ex-Catholic, so I thought it would be kind of fun to do a tip of the hat to, oh shoot, I had it in my head a second ago. No. The one with the monks in space. Oh shoot. Anyway, I just wanted to do a tip of the hat to that one. So subsequently, there's the whole colony used to be a Catholic monastery. So so there's that. Anyway, I just thought it would be fun. I just pulled things from all different places and thought, wouldn't that make an interesting character? And then went with it. I like there's a part of me that really enjoys good guy, bad guy characters, like a lot. And Rosie is the epitome of the good guy, bad guy character, you know? Yeah. Someone who's, I guess that's part of the quintessential samurai Ronin thing, right? Too. So yeah, I just love the playing with the person that had pure moral ethics all their lives, and then all of a sudden car crash and things get really messed up, and what goes on in the brain after all of that, I find it fascinating. So
yeah, and Rosie is a fascinating character. And just to give folks, which I should have done this before, but to give folks like a brief overview of Rosie, Rosie is like the local bar owner and crime boss. And Rosie is a non-binary character, and they are sort of the boss of the band of mercenaries that the book follows. And so, yeah, Rosie is a really interesting character, and there's a lot going on with Rosie in the background. And that's what I found so interesting, too, is that like Rosie is a puppeteer, right? Like Rosie isn't the one like doing the stuff, but Rosie is influencing everything. That's really cool to me.
Rosie has a lot of power. I wanted them to have a lot of power because, again, I don't see much going on with non-binary characters having a lot of power. So what the fuck? Why not?
Exactly. And I, as a non-binary person, I appreciated it so much. I think that's why I liked Rosie so much. Because it's like, yeah, I never see this. I never see, non-binary characters in these like super powerful positions where they are the ones that are sort of controlling how certain things go. I don't want to get too spoilery, but I thought it was very, very cool that you did that.
I love it. And I don't know. I have friends and they don't, I just want everybody to get a chance to be cool. You know what I
mean? Yeah. Yes. And everyone does get a chance to be cool in this book. I think that's what makes it so great. And so let's talk about Vizier for a second too, because what I loved about Vizier, who is sort of the evil villain in this book.
There's no sort of.
yeah. Vizier is not nice. But what's cool about Vizier is that you also often don't see women characters that are the villain that are also have like depths to them. Usually it's sort of just like the maleficent evil witch for evil witch's sake. And there's really nothing else there. But with Vizier, there's a lot of things there, and we get Vizier's backstory. But like literally the first thing you see, like the first 2 pages, is Vizier committing genocide on a planet. So like Vizier is not good, y'all. But Vizier was so interesting as a character because again, she's like in the background of a lot of things. But we don't follow really Vizier, but Vizier is always, something's always going on with Vizier. So I'm really curious about this character as well. And like your process of like writing this villainous character, but also like you do have a tiny shred of empathy for Vizier at some point.
Yeah. I don't know that we can explain what that is without giving away.
No, without spoilery. But I guess you can tell us like how did you come about? Like how did Vizier come about, and like your process, I guess, of writing Vizier compared to the other characters, or if it was the same.
Well, with her, again, the way female villains are generally portrayed, they have 2 reasons for being, right? 2 reasons for acquiring power. They want to be young forever, or they want to be oh shoot! Now I had again. I'm getting
it's cool.
Nervous.
You had told me this earlier. Young and beautiful,
or rich, right?
Those
right.
are the 2. Yeah.
So it's like they want to acquire men is basically what it amounts to. They want to be young and beautiful and attractive, and really that's it. And young forever. It's like, what's the point? There's so much more to being a person than being attractive to someone else, right? And female villains don't get to be anything but that. So I definitely wanted to give Vizier other reasons for doing things. And so I definitely did that.
Yes, you definitely did. And we won't say anymore because it would be spoilery, but Vizier is so interesting as a character.
And the best thing about the best villains are the ones that actually genuinely believe that they are doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's also what gives, for the best villains, it's what gives you the understanding and that empathy towards them is like, it's like they have a reason, right? Like there's a reason why they're doing this. It's not just evil for evil's sake. It's because, whatever else has happened. And they're not just like going about doing willy-nilly stuff,
Right. I mean, when you think about various organizations in the world that have really done some of the most awful things, right? They're run by people who really firmly believe that they are doing the right thing, that they absolutely believe that they are there because God told them to do the thing, and or whatever. They just and they're fanatics about it. So for me, that's what a villain is someone who's taken something, just some sort of conviction, just to such an extreme that they really just don't give a rat's ass who they run over in the process of acquiring that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the bang that Vizier does, like the literal at the beginning of this book, it's a negotiation that ends in genocide, and like that's not a spoiler. It's literally like the first 2 pages of this book. But this book starts with that, and then a failed break-in, and then like this assassination at this like fancy dress party that goes like all wrong. And these are all like just back-to-back things that happen in like the first 50 pages or less of this book. Like it's just all, that's the beginning. So I also wanted to ask, how did you decide where to start? And like, what was it like sort of writing this sort of action-packed beginning?
I usually tend to write in the middle of an action scene. I usually start out in the middle of an action scene because I find that to be the most fun. It tends to be really grippy. I worked at a bookstore for 7 or 8 years. Book People here in Austin. And one of the things, if you ever watched people look at books in a bookstore, they'll take a book off the shelf and they'll open it up to the first page and they'll read that first paragraph or so, right? And then at that point, they'll decide whether they take it with them or they put it back on the shelf. So I have always operated under the theory that you got 2 or 3 paragraphs to grab somebody's attention. You can't, there's not a lot of time there. So you really need to grab them. So I generally tend to start off in the middle of an action scene. And the reason that there are 3 back-to-back action scenes in this is at one point in time, all 3 of those were the first chapter.
Wow.
And then I went, oh no, that's not the beginning. It has to be here, you know? And I honestly really enjoy writing stories where random things in the beginning, seemingly random things happen, and then everything coalesces together. Because I like that bit of synchronicity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's always cool as a reader too, to like see, you know, all these disparate things happening. And then like, you know, that eventually it's going to come together, right? Like you trust that the writer is going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That like, oh yeah, it's all going to come together at some point. And so you're just kind of along for the ride.
Oh, yeah.
But the action-y, I mean, this book just generally is super actiony. Like that's just,
I wanted it to be, you know, I didn't want to do anything like was really slow and literary. I can do literary and it's slow and that kind of, I can do that. But this one, I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be interesting intellectually. I wanted it to be, I just wanted it to be the action movie the rest of us deserve, right?
yeah.
So
that's awesome. Okay, so speaking of,
I remember it's the Sparrow. It's the Sparrow, the book that I couldn't remember with the monks.
Oh, the monks in space.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was gonna say, speaking of movie, because this was a question that I had for later, but since you brought up movie, so if this book was made into a movie or a TV show, like who would you ideally cast in the main roles?
Oh my God. Okay, so I may have to open up my file to tell you. I actually had a list. It's
that's awesome.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna.
No, I don't mind because I want to hear this.
It's just gonna take a minute because
This would make an action-packed TV show for sure. I think it's maybe too long for a movie. Like, I don't think that the movie could do it justice because it's, I don't know, maybe. But you'd have to cut a lot out to make a movie.
Yeah. There's all kinds of little details in it that I enjoyed putting in. Like, once upon a time, I was at a friend's house for a New Year's Eve party, and there was a huge bonfire, and there was somebody there that had served in some war, and I don't know which one it was. It may have been the end of the Vietnam War, but I don't know for sure. And we were talking about weapons, and he was going on at some length about how crappy this particular weapon was, and that's where that one scene came from, where they're talking about the rifle in the swamp and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, not that one. Not that one, my friend. The other one. Okay. Recent projects. Can you do it?
I will use this as a reminder to tell people that if you have questions, drop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end.
I don't know why I was nervous, because I actually really I'm really
Awesome. Yeah. This is super fun. And one other thing to let folks know is if you buy books from us, we have signed book plates, and I hear tell that we're the only store that has these at the moment.
That's the truth.
If you want signed book plates, you can order the book from us.
Okay. You ready?
Yes. Tell us.
Okay. Angel de la Reza, Zoe Selin.
Ooh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. Lou, Ruth Nega.
Okay. All right. I got it. I got that.
Okay. Suki, Rosario Dawson.
Yes. Rosario Dawson will make a good Suki. I was actually thinking of oh no, what is her name? Okay, keep going.
Okay. Now, this is crazy pants, but I absolutely adore Angela Bassett. I adore her.
Yes.
So, Enid Crow, Angela Bassett.
That's awesome. Yes.
Yes. And I wasn't really sure about Beak, because Beak is someone that I borrowed a lot of Sphinx from Gone in 60 Seconds. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking, it's terrible. I don't have her name here. You know, the actress from, Gwendolyn Christie. Right.
Oh, yes. I love this cast already. What about Rosie?
Rosie, I had. Where is this? Hang on, I'm looking them up. Well, ultimately, I really want a non-binary person in that role, and I don't really know of any non-binary actors at this point. There
are quite a few. I'm trying to think of who I would see as Rosie, and somebody like. Do you watch Pose? By any chance? There's a show called Pose. Yeah.
No, but I should.
There's an actor on Pose called India Moore, who I don't know if you know who that is, but I think
no, looking now.
Non-binary actor, and voiced a non-binary character on Steven Universe as well. I think they were the voice of Shep on Steven Universe. And so I don't know. I think it's INDYA, India Moore. You should look them up because I think they would be pretty good for Rosie.
I think they would be most excellent for Rosie. Yeah. They would be excellent for Rosie.
I like them. I know a bunch of non-binary actors, but a lot of them are white as well. So
yeah, and Yeah, they need to be black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, India Moore, I thought of when I was reading, that's like sort of the person I had in my head for Rosie. So anyway, just that's why I asked. I'm like, oh, I wonder if like the people in my head are the people in your head, but
is it close? I mean, it doesn't matter. The people in your head are
close. Yeah.
right.
Some of those actors I didn't think about, but like, yeah, you were saying people, and I'm like, yeah, Rosario Dawson was in my head for Angel.
Oh, I can see that too.
And so, yeah, so you said, I'm like, oh, I'm glad you mentioned Rosario Dawson because she was in my head for this group for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I love your Angela Bassett recommendation. Love it.
I just totally see her.
I also
with a long rifle, just just decked out to the nines.
I also think Regina King for somebody. Because Regina King is super badass as well. Would love to see Regina King in this cast.
Okay, well now I have to see that.
we have talked about that. So one thing is that this whole book,
yes, Regina King would be awesome.
Regina King, right?
Yes.
From Watchmen, she was amazing in Watchmen and in everything that she does, really, which is why it's like just throw Regina King in literally everything because she's the best.
She's incredible. She's incredible. Yes, absolutely.
But okay, so this whole book to me, and you may be like, no, but this whole book to me sort of felt very like role play gamey. So it felt very like D&D. And I was just wondering if like you played role playing games or if that was any sort of inspiration, because like all these actions and adventures, it just felt like a role playing game.
Okay. I have actually run D&D for 16 years as a DM.
Yeah.
I played and run D&D for a ridiculous amount of time, like more than 30 years.
You can tell.
So that's also part of learning about action scenes. I've taken a lot of martial arts, and so
can also tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of snuck my dojo in for the all-female school. So I referenced my former dojo. But other than that, yeah, but I didn't really intend to have it be very D&D necessarily. Because there's certain aspects of it that don't translate necessarily, but I've been doing it so long, I can't say that didn't bleed over. I mean, it's just part of my story DNA.
Sure. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any particular inspiration from D&D, but it's like, yeah, you can tell that like, I'm like, this author definitely has to have played D&D. Like there's no way that like D&D is not a part of this person's life. I would have been very disappointed if you were like, no, I've never done a role-playing game. I'd have been disappointed. Because I'm like, clearly D&D is part of this person's life.
Yeah.
And yes, I also wanted to talk about, so just in speaking about like your world building, and like we were talking about this earlier, that this book does like a lot of things, and there's just a lot going on in it as well. So I was wondering too, are you a plotter or a pantser? Did you plan everything out? I mean, like I'm just wondering how you kept track of everything, because in my head you have like a murder board of like pictures and things and like strings going from, so like how do you keep track of everything happening?
Okay, well, I'm a pantser, and I use Scrivener. So I use a lot of Scrivener, and I do a lot of drafts. I have a husband who is a Virgo, and he reads he backs me up. He's my my alpha reader, and so he's the one that looks at the details. I have ADHD, so that whole hyper focus thing is a thing for me. So juggling all the plates is not as difficult. I mean, it's handy to have that particular flaw when you're an author. mean, there might be a reason why there are a number of authors with ADHD. Just saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how I write a lot of notes to myself. And
yeah, Scrivener is a great program for those writers who are watching, because you can sort of just write and then organize as you go or later, or figure out where things go. You can move things around very easily.
I love that you can move chapters around if you need to, and it operates in different ways in that you can use the index card method because that's built into it if that's your thing. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea of a murder board, and one day I might have to resort to that, but I haven't done it yet.
That's kind of what Scrivener does in a way, is that you can like have like a digital murder board.
I dearly love that I can just find an actor and like drop a picture in there, and then hey, that's what that person looks like to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, switching gears a little bit, in a world of series, like everything is a series these days, right?
Right.
Persephone Station is not, right? It's a standalone. So
It's a standalone.
Why write a standalone in a world of series?
Here's the thing. I there are people who can manage series and do them well, and then people who can't really. And I strongly suspect I'm one of those who can't. I see myself. Really want to do it like Terry Pratchett did, where each book stands alone, but they stack on each other. So if you've read the 60-odd books in the Discworld series, you know that Vimes develops as a character across the series, right? You know that you know more about Granny Weatherwax than meets the eye. And it's, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I love that.
And I love Ian Banks's Culture series is another one. It's all set in a particular world, but all of the books stand alone. And you put together over time more and more things about the culture as you read. So I love that too. So I think, has to do with my style as a writer more than anything. Also, with series, you get a lot of drop off. The first book everybody's mobs onto, and then the second book comes along, and you lose half the readers, at least. And then it just keeps on going downhill from there, unless you're, someone who
still has millions, zillions of readers, way down the line. But his is the same as well. It's not like you don't have to read them in order or anything. You can just pick up pretty much any of them. And it's similar to these other ones too, where it's just like a world, or like Terry Pratchett. So, but yeah, unless you're like one of these those kinds of people, I can see how people sort of drop, or Game of Thrones or something, right?
Yeah. And publishers really want you to like maintain the audience as much as humanly possible. And I have this nasty habit of making like super interesting characters, and then, oh wait, there's a cool one over there, but we want to know more about Nels, for Pete's sake, Nels, or Liam, or I'm just like, yeah, I told their story.
Yeah. And sort of similarly, I think pretty much everything else you've written has been fantasy. So is there a reason why you wanted to switch to sci-fi?
My editor asked me, do you have any sci-fi ideas? And I was like, I have this one. I'm not sure anybody would be into it, but this is what I want to do. And he was like, I am writing the contract now. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know, because I know you're a big Star Trek fan, so I didn't know if it was just like you wanted to do something like that.
I kind of always wanted to do that, honestly, but it's not a very welcoming scene for anyone who's not a white dude. It hasn't been in the past. It's getting much better, but it's just, it's still kind of rough because I still have, like, on Goodreads, people who insist that I have written a fantasy book and not a science fiction one. And I'm like, it's in outer space. There are rocket ships.
There's no magic.
There's no magic. Why do you want to call it a fantasy? Oh, because a woman wrote it. You know, it's like, whatever. It's really hard. Particularly when you get people who are hard science fiction is the only science fiction that's legit, you know, that kind of attitude.
Oh, yeah.
It's really rough. So I saw it as something that is really intimidating. I mean, when I first started writing, I really wanted to write science fiction, but I just didn't have the guts to do it right away. So I was just like, yeah, I can do fantasy. It'll be all right. I'm not really a science person, but I really kind of am in a lot of ways. Like I studied up really hard. There's so much science to learn and learn about everything when you're writing science fiction. And for Persephone Station, I focused primarily on the AI aspects of it. And the current science, as I know it, is there's AI, which is basically like an algorithm or whatever. And then there's AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And that's why I have those two distinctions. The general intelligence is more like Kennedy or I'm sorry. I blew it. It's more like what you would think of, like data and you know, all the others that have shown up in but people resist calling it an AGI for some reason. So whatever. But I
you also have Kurosawa, who is AI, right?
I love Kurosawa. Kurosawa is fun.
Kurosawa, just for folks listening, Kurosawa is a drop ship. So and is very cool as well. And the audio, so I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook reader does a really good job like being Kurosawa.
Oh, really? Because I thought,
have you heard it? You didn't like
I have. I wanted Kurosawa to have kind of a Japanese accent, but and she didn't do that, which I found was a little disappointing. But that's just me personally. I liked it otherwise. Yeah. So I love Kurosawa. I thought it would be really fun to just go ahead and when Magnificent Seven was originally done, the Italian director didn't actually give Kurosawa credit for what he'd done. He just did it and went about his business. And then Kurosawa was like, excuse me, that's my movie.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be like that. I wanted it to be blatantly obvious that I like Kurosawa, and here we are. Akira Kurosawa, there you are.
So what are you reading? Do you have any like book recommendations for us?
Oh my God. Right now, what am I reading? I'm reading Ted Chiang. Ted Chiang's latest short story.
Exhalation.
Yes, I'm reading that.
Ted Chiang is so good.
Oh yeah, I'm rereading Becky Chambers' The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I love that one.
Becky Chambers has some new stuff coming out.
Yeah, I know.
The
reason I'm rereading it. Let's see. I just finished City of Illusions by Ursula Le Guin. What else I got in here? I haven't finished the Culture series yet, but I'm working on it. So but there's so much information; it's so dense. Sometimes I have to like.
I'm sorry, you froze. You froze just for a second. So what was the last book you said?
Ian Banks's Culture series. I haven't read all of the novels in it yet. I've read 4 or 5 of them so far. Cool. So I'm still working on those. Because I'm writing my next novel is called Loki's Ring, and there's a ring world in it. I read the Larry Niven Ring World.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I haven't read it.
Okay. I didn't like it. I hated it.
I know about, I know what it is, but I have not read it.
Female characters. I really hate it. But that's me. What else? I recently finished Kindred. It's really good.
The graphic novel is also really good for Kindred.
Oh, don't.
I think they're making a movie or a TV show or something as well. For Kindred.
Yes. I got Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor on my list.
I like novellas a lot.
Binti was amazing.
Read them. Yes, I can read them like super quick too. So I really like that. And so what are you working on? Like you said, Loki's Ring. What are you working on now that you can tell us about? It's another team up of, non-white males hanging out. Hooray! I always love non-white dudes hanging out.
And they run a space salvage
so this one's in space too. Cool.
Mm-hmm. It's another science fiction novel. But yeah, they basically, what's the pitch for this one? I always really liked the beginning, that one scene in Apollo 13, where they get all of the mechanical engineers in the room and they say, okay, we need to make this thing out of paper clips, pieces of paper, and out of this. Go for it. You have 20 hours or everybody's going to die. I always loved that scene, So I thought, wouldn't it be great if women got to do that?
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like so much fun.
Non-binary characters as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so we have one question that I like this question. Jessica Rose asks, what was your favorite character dynamic to write?
Oh my God. Well, of course, Suki and Angel, right? I mean, oh my
Great
God.
Dynamic right there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love those two. It's a hoot. You can go ahead and in my head, Angel is Ace and Suki is everybody. And so some people have come to me and were like, oh, what a great romance between those two. Why didn't they hook up? And I'm like, Angel's Ace. But if you want to assume that's a romance, go for it. I'm all right with that. But to me, women don't get in, and other genders don't get to be best friends and just be best friends. It always has to be some sort of romantic relationship, right? And if I don't have a problem with romance, I just didn't want it to be central to the story because most of the time it's usually about the relationships, and I just wanted it to be adventure and fun. But Suki was so much fun to write.
Yeah, and I always appreciate, if the romance isn't on the page to me, then I don't assume it.
Right.
That's me. I love romance and I love reading romance books, because the happily ever after and they're great. But I also super love just a good friendship.
Yeah,
exactly. It's why does any of this ever have to be romantic? They can just be best friends. And I like portrayals of sort of intimate friendships that never turn romantic. I love that. I'm here for that. It's one of my favorite things. So
yeah. What's wrong with that? But and also I didn't want to me, it seems like whenever there's a book that features LGBTQ plus characters, the sex is what everybody zeroes in on. And on one hand, I understand why, I do. But on the other hand, I didn't want to make it. I didn't want to fetishize it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like there should be in existence like all kinds of stories, not just one kind. And part of my staying in my lane was, let's just make this not be central to the story.
Yeah, and it didn't need to be. No, like the story is good without that. And like, I think it's cool because it leaves room for, I always like things that leave room for fan fiction. So it's like, if you really love that, like go ship them to your heart's content, right?
Okay.
It's like my favorite thing is when books do that, because then it's like, oh, I'm gonna write. I want to know more about this character. I'm gonna go figure that out on my own. I love fan fiction. So we only have a few minutes left. So what I want to do, besides hawking books, because everyone should buy this book. Again, we have been talking about Persephone Station is the name of the book. This is the cover, which is very cool. Tell us a little bit about this cover.
Oh, the artist is Tomer Hanukkah, and he does some really amazing stuff. He's on the internet. He does a lot of, do you have Alamo Draft House there's an Alamo Draft House there, right?
There isn't, but I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like this whole series. There's a gallery, an art gallery that's associated with it. That they do remakes of all kinds of different movie posters. And Tomer is one of those artists. He did this really cool Blade Runner poster that is one of my favorites, but it's out of print and there's no way ever in this universe that I'll ever afford it. But yeah, he did the cover, and originally I had hoped for something with like the whole cast on it, and when they showed me this cover, I was a little actually disappointed because I didn't see the whole cast, but it grew on me. It absolutely grew on me, and the more I just adore it now. So it's being framed. I have a printout of it, and it's being framed, and it'll be in my living room. I love it that much. Yeah. So I think it's pretty awesome. It took me a while to figure out that it's Kennedy.
It is Kennedy, who we didn't really talk about because I feel like talking about Kennedy is a bit spoilery, but Kennedy is an amazing character as well. And yeah, it took me a minute as well. Like I was staring at this cover and I'm like, which character is this? And I'm like, I know which character this is.
It took me a while, it was dumb because it's obvious once you see it, but
it's super obvious, but also it's like, yeah, once you know that it's Kennedy, you're like, what? But yeah, I think that was really, really cool too. So yes, you can go to tubbyandcoos.com and place an order and just click on the book cover, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty easy to buy this book from us, and we do have signed book plates. And if you didn't hear me earlier, I tell that we are the only bookstore that has signed book plates at the moment. So if you want a signed book plate, you have to order through us. We're the only place to get that, which is pretty cool, I think.
I love independent bookstores.
Yay.
So
and we are actually going to give away a signed copy of this book. So if you want to win a signed copy of the book, I'm putting in the chat right now. I'm putting a link to a Google form that you just fill out. You just put your name, your email, your mailing address. If you win, we will need to know where to mail it. And then we're going to give a secret password. So Stina, go ahead and give out the password.
It's Zhang. I'm not saying it right, but it's Zhang. ZHANG.
So that's the secret password. That is one of the things in the Google form. So if you fill that out, then we will sort of randomly pick from the folks who fill it out. And you have to be watching this We're not giving, the only way to get that password is to be watching this at this moment. So it will be one of you viewers who are watching us live that will win a copy of the book. Sorry if you're not watching live, because this will live on our YouTube channel. Don't try and enter this if you're not watching it live, because we will have already given it away. So sorry about that, but you can still purchase a copy of the book later, anytime. But yes, the giveaway is for live viewers only. So the Google Doc is in the chat. Just go and fill out that form and you'll be entered to win a copy, and we will just choose probably tomorrow. I will sort of randomize and pick somebody and send your information to Stina, and Stina will send you a signed copy of the book. So thanks for doing that giveaway, Stina.
You're welcome. You're also the only bookstore that's doing a giveaway.
Well, look at that. I like being unique. And yeah, so one last question that I sort of have about the marketing for this book, because I saw someone say this in the comments and it was the same for me. Like, what got me hooked on this book is that it's the marketing says that it's Cowboy Bebop meets The Mandalorian in like a feminist space opera. And I mean, I was just like, yes, I have to read that. I love all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And like, it's not wrong. So I'm wondering, did like the publisher come up with that? Did you come up with that? Like, who came up with that? I know that you say it's the Magnificent Seven, which also is not wrong at all. So I'm just wondering who came up with the marketing.
The publisher did, actually. I was very excited. This book was already written when The Mandalorian came out. I was very excited when it did come out because, again, The Mandalorian is a riff on Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
Which is another samurai story.
Yeah.
So I was like, yes.
Yeah. And yeah, I knew, I mean, The Mandalorian's was too new to have been out like when you were writing this book. So I knew it would come out later. And it's like the publisher was probably like, oh, cool, this is going to be a really good comp because a lot of people are going to watch this and probably like it. And then we can be like, oh, did you like that? Read this book. And it works out really well.
Yeah. As for Cowboy Bebop, that works too.
Oh, it does work. Yeah.
I have an animation degree and I love animation. So
that's super cool. Yeah. I did not know you had an animation degree. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yes, and so I know that we've been talking for an hour, which it doesn't feel like it. But thank you so much, Stina, for coming and talking with me. This was a lot of fun and super interesting, and I really appreciate it. And I do think that folks should buy this book if you can. One more time. I know we just did this, but this is why we're here. Persephone Station, and buy it from us, chubbyandcoos.com, and place an order. We are currently the only store with signed book plates. So if you want to get a signed book plate with it, we're the only spot to get that. And finally, also we are giving away a book. And so if you go to the chat, I have put the Google form there. So go and fill that out. And the password is Zhang, Zhang. If you didn't catch that, but you're catching it now. So that's the secret password to enter our giveaway. And thank you to everyone who's watching live, who is watching later. I always love to reference Doctor Who and time travel because it's live for us, but like somebody might be watching it years from now. Who knows? Hopefully the book is still in print and you can buy it.
And the internet is forever.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you. And thank you so much, Stina. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And y'all have a good evening.